Hi, and welcome to the 2-Minute Warning. I am your host, Perry Busby, even if you don't see me, but yes, here I am. This is the 2-Minute Warning, brought to you by the Westside Gazette, South Florida, one of South Florida's oldest African-American-owned newspaper that's been serving the South Florida area, and I dare say Florida, for the last 51 years. And joining me is my co-host, the publisher of the Westside Gazette, my good friend, Mr. Bobby Henry. Bobby, how you doing, my brother?
You know, Perry, I am terrific and getting better, but this distance between you and I is breaking my heart, man. You're in Tallahassee.
Right.
I understand. Brother, I wish you were here. So I just say that.
Yeah. Well, no, that just means that the 2-Minute Warning is expanding. We're going to touch new areas, and this is the sacrifice. I enjoy the few weeks we had just to sit at the table together and talk, and we're going to still have that. This is just a new journey and something, and so. I want us to hit it hard. If I'm in Tallahassee, I want us to hit the issues hard because I've been in Broward hearing people talk about, Tallahassee is all Tallahassee. Well, we're gonna be here in Tallahassee, and I want to touch some people. Tallahassee is not this mystical place. I mean, having lived here, when I moved to Broward, people. We're like, you going down to South Florida as if it was some other world, which it is.
Yeah,
it is. And so, but we got to connect these miles because what happens in Broward affects here in Tallahassee and all of Florida. And what happens here in Tallahassee affects Broward as well. And so, we got to touch this distance and quit throwing some rocks at it, hoping we can make a difference. So, man, let's get going because we got a lot to talk about.
Let's do it. You mentioned the circumference of what we do, and right now, Perry, all eyes are on Florida for not only the elections, but the other storms that have brewed and become a part of our lifestyle here in Florida. And so tonight, our guest will discuss that which happened, that what is taking place and is transforming our lives, and one who can perhaps have some answers and some assistance to getting those issues taken care of. So if I can bring our first guest on, our first guest is Miss Jenise Griffen. Jenise is the publisher of the Florida Courier and the Daytona Times. Jenise is a resident, or her home is in the area which was devastated by the hurricane. One of the areas is River Park, and that's where she's from. So if we can we bring on the publisher extraordinaire, Jenise? Good evening, Jenise.
Oh, good evening. What a great introduction, Bobby. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here with you and Perry, and I'm so excited to be able to just have a conversation about this very important issue. Actually, I grew up in River Park, a predominantly Black community in Naples, actually the only historically African-American community in Naples, the affluent area. Most people don't even know there's a Black neighborhood there. But I have been in touch with people since the storm went through, and they have some great concerns. They feel neglected, left out, just forgotten. So I'm glad we're able to just kind of bring some light to what's going on over there. I actually live in the Tampa Bay area now, but I'm in Naples area all the time. So still keeping up with what's happening in that community.
Okay. I know, Jenise, I told you that when you told me that pulled at my heart. we think we know, but until we are affected by what is happening, we really don't know. So I thank you. We're going to show some of the pictures of some of the things that you've been dealing with, and you're covering, and you're trying to bring some closure and assistance to. So hopefully, no, not hopefully, he said he would, and he's a man of his word, even though he's a Bison, a graduate of Howard University. I'm trying to pull my information up so I can introduce him correctly. Okay. Now, so our next guest is Mr. Marcus Coleman. Marcus serves as the director of the Department of Homeland Security, at the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnership. Marcus is a graduate of Howard University. He has been engaged in other storms and other entities that pertain to Homeland Security. So if we can we bring on Mr. Marcus Coleman, please?
Good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Coleman. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I ask you just one question? We're going to get right into this. Marcus, what does it mean to be the director of the Department of Homeland Security Partnerships at the center? What does that mean?
It means I have at least 4 bosses. So in addition to the Most High, boss number 1 is my immediate report, FEMA Administrator Chriswell. So I report directly to the administrator in her front office, and it is our responsibility to ensure nationally that we're making connections to our faith-based and community-based partners to address any barrier that they're facing for the mission of FEMA. And so that's both man-made and natural disasters. My second boss is DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. He is responsible for leading the charge around safety and security for community spaces and houses of worship. And so we work a lot in support of him there. Now, of course, at the White House, we have 2 people that a lot of people know, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. But I also serve directly to the executive director of the White House Office of Faith-Based Neighborhood Partnerships, Melissa Rogers. She manages a team of 11 directors like myself across the federal government. And our responsibility is to ensure, again, we're providing proactively access to information to national groups, going to communities where they are, and making sure that there's no wrong door for a faith-based or community-based organization that's serving their people.
Okay, Marcus, we just want to set the table. First of all, who you are, what you do, and the capacity of which you do it, and your capabilities of doing it. Not only are you you're from Arizona, but you reside in Washington, and you're engaged in a lot of community efforts. So this is what you like to do. This is your passion. And Ms. Griffen, the fact that your home, your neighborhood have been affected by the storm, we thought we would bring you 2 together and allow you to engage in conversation to see how we can get the needs of those affected by this storm and addressed immediately. So, Ms. Ariel, can you put up just a couple of pictures for us to begin this conversation with? The devastation that we've seen. Okay. Okay. Some of these pictures were actually submitted by Jenise's families and friends. So Jenise, I'll step back and allow you to engage in this conversation.
Yes, thank you, Bobby. These pictures were sent to me by some people I know who actually live in River Park. And that picture right there shows the day of them evacuating. The guy on the left side, his wife sent me pictures via Facebook. I have been communicating with her just about every day about what's happening over there. It sounded really dire. It is really dire. She was, that's another photo of on a 13th Street. That's another street, different guy, young guy. He's been posting on Facebook, been letting everybody know what's been happening. So, their homes are pretty devastated. That doesn't really, really tell the story. Those pictures, but what I said, it was pretty dire in the beginning, and it's better now. It's still a really bad situation for the people living on there. They just got help from Fema. I think it was yesterday morning. I talked to a guy this morning who lives over there, who was saying that his father-in-law actually owns the house that he and his wife live in. They were able to complete the application process over there yesterday. I don't know if some of the other elderly people, there are a lot of elderly people in their 90s who still live over there, and we don't know if they have been able to complete that paperwork. And so the NAACP, the Courier County NAACP, has really been doing an excellent job. They've been over there ever since the hurricane. They were been on the ground every day, going door to door, assessing the needs. They've really mobilized the community organizations. Sorority I'm in, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority has been over there doing a lot. The churches are feeding people. Black and white folks are coming into community. But the biggest need still is that shelter. They're taking mattresses out and trying to dry those mattresses and put them back in the house and sleeping on soiled furniture because they can't afford to go anywhere else. The hotels still are booked for the most part from Naples to Fort Myers, so you can't find housing, and Naples is not really affordable anyway. And there are really not many homeless shelters, no shelters for people to go to. I heard that there was a shelter that was opening up yesterday, so that might be able to provide some relief to some people. And so maybe Marcus can speak to how do we move forward? And I know people are getting the help through FEMA, but we want to make sure they're getting all the help. We know it's a long process, so I just kind of wanted to be, you can help to provide some light on what happens next and what we need to do.
Absolutely. Praying for you and praying for all of those that were affected directly. It is not lost on me the traumatization and really re-traumatization, because this happens in the context of the pandemic, coming out of the civil unrest that we've been dealing with. And I know a lot of people, right, again, they may have lost friends and loved ones for a number of other reasons. So it's with all the grace that I can offer to just extend to you and to family members that have been affected. In terms of where we go from here, and just to paint the picture on what we're focused on nationally and how that informs some of what we do locally. So I've been in contact as well with the NAACP through their National Climate Justice and Environmental Justice Director and their National Emergency Management Response Team. It is important for me and important for FEMA to make sure that in addition to those government-to-government connections with governors and mayors and county officials, that we're also in touch with the NAACP, organizations like the National Urban League and the National Panhellenic Council, both nationally, but ultimately taking direction from what's happening on the ground. And so what was shared and what we continue to talk about at the national level is she's mentioned places like Collier County, Lee County. There's some specific communities where we want to make sure that those units are getting all the information that they need. But I'll say their assessments feed back into what we need to be doing as an agency. And so if Collier County has had some neighborhoods, if the NAACP there, if there's specific neighborhoods and places, we have disaster survivor assistance team members who also go door to door to help people register, because we don't want a barrier to be you have to drive and go sit in front of a building for a few hours to register. But we also recognize, right, some people may not know who to trust. Some people may not know who to talk to. And so one of the directives that we have moving forward is ensuring that our disaster survivor assistance teams are linked to local NAACPs, local pastors, local faith and community leaders, to make sure that we are getting to communities. Because every pastor in that community, I'm sure, knows they have a sick and shut-in list. They know the people that need some additional help to get through the process. And so those are some of the practical things that we're doing to help take action. To your question about shelter and just right, it's not just about getting through the registration process. That's going to help you down the line. But we know that there are critical assistance needs for today. So we do partner with a whole coalition of national organizations, but there are a few programs. One program I was actually looking up, I think, has either been activated or will be activated soon, called the Transitional Sheltering Assistance Program. That's going to be a way to help survivors find safe places to be for extended periods of time. Because if you lost everything, building a house doesn't happen. Regardless of what HGTV says, it doesn't happen in an hour. It takes a long time, and there has to be a lot of people that are part of that process. And so that's one of the programs that have been turned on. But I want to make sure to confirm, and I'll send it to both the West Side Gazette and to you as well, ma'am, to ensure that we're getting that information out so people know what benefits and resources they have accessible to them.
Okay. I see we got a question coming in from one of our viewers, Mr. Noonie Robinson. It says, someone fortunate enough to own property unscathed in Southwest Florida, interested in rental partnership with FEMA and the government, should communicate with whom?
I'm going to drop an email in the chat, and then you can share this out. If they send an email to partnerships@fema.dhs.gov, that goes directly to me and 7 members of my team, and we will help route them to the appropriate person. We do recognize that there are some people that have been privileged and blessed enough to serve in that position of providing rental properties and things like that. Those are programs that I don't have information about tonight, but can route to our appropriate team that's going to be looking for those alternative sources of housing down the line.
You know, and I was reading a press release earlier in reference to FEMA and helping those to find paying hotel and motel bills. How does that work, Mr. Coleman?
Absolutely. So that is our FEMA Transitional Housing Assistance Program. I'm actually looking it up right now, so that way we can drop it and share it. That's the thing I appreciate about doing these live conversations. So that program, as it's turned on, they will actually be able to reach out and talk to people about what housing options are close by. Because the other thing that we know when we start talking about doing these programs and turning them on, people need to be close to home. Now, there's eligibility for other programs. We know some people may have disaster unemployment, so we have that assistance available. But for those people that are looking to get to the next phase of their recovery, which may include, after finding a safe place, getting back to work, getting back to resources, we're going to continue to do the best that we can to make sure that any housing options, temporary shelter options that we create, are keeping people close to where they are from and where they work, live, and worship.
Okay, I'm not alluding to we have the hookup right about now, but Jenise, you know people who are directly affected, and I was talking to a gentleman who had problems dealing with her phone, the call in part of this thing. So Jenise, are you aware of anybody that needs assistance? I know immediately I hate to be redundant, but that right now who just are in dire straits, and if Mr. Coleman can direct some immediate process.
Definitely. I mean, I wouldn't, say I know just one or two. I mean, I know a number of people who are in dire straits. There's I was told there's a woman over there in River Park area who in her 90s, she lives by herself. The community, they actually had to pull her out of the storm. When during the evacuation time from where she lived, they had to go and actually pick her up and take her out because she had nowhere to go. So you have a number of people like that. So yes, I like the fact that the woman asked that question about the housing. Somebody has mental housing because that's very important. If somebody's able to help, that would be great. And that's one thing that NAACP and Courier and some of the other organizations have been looking into as well.
Absolutely. I think something, if I can just add, and I feel like for her experience or anybody, right? If you lost everything, the last thing you want to do is try to scramble and find paperwork. And so I think some of the things that we are also proactively doing, and we have partners that can help with this too. So we do have disaster legal assistance that's available for free for people that are trying to navigate some of the legal aspects of applying for assistance and making sure they have information out there. But to your point, Mr. Henry, it's not about having a hookup; it's about having a partnership. So we want to make sure that we are providing some of the direct information. What I've been doing with my friends and family that have been impacted by the storms is we've been using text messages, because for some people, that's the best way that they can communicate. They can't sit on the phone for hours at a time. They can't be on Zoom, or they can't join webinars. And so we've actually developed some very short and specific text messages that anybody can use for friends and family members that point them directly to resources and infographics, so people can see clearly what steps they need to take. And for me, for a few friends, I'm the one kind of guiding them through the process from afar as they pull their things together. And so that's something that we recognize a lot of people may be playing that role as well for friends and loved ones that have been impacted by this storm.
Okay. Yeah, I know we've been talking in terms of, I guess, how to get help, but we also know that there's a good number of people who are going to fall in within these themes. What are some of the known issues that you're facing now that maybe if we talk about it, people can maybe proactively, get prepared for that, as opposed to the additional angst and anxiety of finding out I'm lost within, I'm falling in the gap. So what are some of the gaps that we know that what people are, that you're facing in this area? Because I know every area is different.
Absolutely. Would you like me to start first, or Mr.
Sure.
Okay.
Either one.
I can say that the gap that I see right now, and this is specifically for the survivors and for families of survivors, it's going to be so much information, and the information is going to change every day. And we got to make sure that we are being clear about what is true and what's a rumor. And so I think one of the gaps is just that information and knowledge gap, because we also don't want people to miss out on opportunities for benefits as well, right? So that's one gap. I'd say the second, and I think Ms. Griffen talked about it. It's not. There may be some critical needs day one, week 2, that you're able to get in place, but we need to make sure that we're continuing to work across a broad coalition of partners to think about the next few weeks up to Christmas. Really, what are the different types of assistance, and who are the different types of partners that are going to help meet some needs at that period? And then, of course, you have the longer term recovery. If somebody's going through the reconstruction process or rehabilitating their home, we don't want people to get taken advantage of. Sadly, in moments like this, you have people, somebody will knock at the door, they look official, they show something to you, you think it's a badge, and then they're taking all of your resources and never coming back. And so we want people to be aware of some of those scams and things as well. But again, for us at FEMA, all of our work is best guided when we are listening to organizations like Collier County, NAACP, Delta Sigma Theta, that's at the chapter level, having those conversations and being in constant coordination and communication with one another allows us to really collaborate and partner to help meet the needs of survivors. And honestly, it's going to be Ms. Griffen that's seeing some of the needs and gaps long before I do, because we're reading all the government reports, right? She's getting ground truth. So,
and I think it's important that you mentioned it's not it's not a quick fix. I mean, this is going to be a long time getting people kind of back on their feet. Another thing I want to make sure people understand, this is happening in Southwest Florida. This is happening in, Dunbar community in Fort Myers, probably Newtown Black community in Sarasota, along with what's happening in River Park. But this can happen anywhere. This will, I know the other coast was spared somewhat, but we need to make sure that we continue in the media, especially in the Black press, to make sure people understand these issues and we are able to give them that information. I'm really concerned about some of the older people, some of the people who don't understand all that paperwork. I know during Irma, I left for a week with my 80-something-year-old mama, and so it took me a while to kind of figure out all this paperwork and what to file and all of that. So someone who doesn't quite not as savvy may not be able to kind of wade through all of that. And I think it's important that they get the information they need. I love the fact that you said you're texting the bits of information, and we've been trying to do that as well. Even though I had people who want to talk to me, I mean, they couldn't interview us because they didn't have much of a phone service, and they don't have power still in the community, so we can't take up a whole lot of their time. So the number of issues that we still need to look at and address.
Because we have little time, we need to do this again to extend the time. But Cheryl Smith brings up a point, and Marcus, this may be a shameless plug, but it's the truth. Cheryl says people have to save their electricity during these catastrophic times, but they can pick up a paper and read. Marcus, tell your agency that disseminating info and placing ads and etc. And to piggyback or to perhaps go in a little bit more detail, the source that people rely on, and Jenise, I'm sure that your neighborhood is knocking down your door because they trust you and what you're doing. And this umbilical cord to the agencies that Marcus represent, there's a conduit there that has already been established of respect and truth and trust. So how do we put all this together so that people can benefit from it? Marcus, how do you see that working? And Jenise, what do you see, or what do you hope to see working?
So I'd say on my end, we need to be a lot more intentional and explicit about supporting papers. I'm a child that grew up reading the Arizona Informant.
Clovis.
Yep, exactly. Out in Tucson, it moved right over to DC and grew and got acclimated to the city, reading the Washington Informer and stuff like that. And my wife is actually an alum of one of the NMPA journalist programs. And so I think being more intentional about making sure, not just in interviews like this, but making some specific investments in local papers and making sure that we are mindful of that ecosystem, because to your point, a lot of people are going to be picking up papers. It still is something that's important to us. And so I know that is a commitment that we have to expand our opportunities for engagements. Yes, having interviews and conversations like these, but finding some more specific ways to be long-term and intentional partners with papers like the ones that I'm on the phone with today.
And Jenise?
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. No, you go.
No, I mean, I agree. I think, I've been in the Black press for, over 20 something, 30 years, I guess. And so I know that need. So I hope that, we can partner with some of these organizations, to make sure that we can get the funding so that we can educate people or inform them on what they need to know. We can do a great job. I felt really bad, actually, because we're in Tampa Bay. I didn't have anybody to send down to Southwest Florida. I was trying to figure out what freelancer do I have down there, but there's nobody that I could think of right away. And I was a little upset that the Miami Herald beat me down there, beat us down there and got a story in before we did. And of course, before my local mainstream press did. They didn't even go over there until the Miami Herald did. So I would like to see us be able to really get in there and tell those stories, tell what's happening in the community, and to try to figure out how we can help and how we can help quickly. I mean, I just feel so bad that it took, we're right now getting to the point where we really can help. And, besides taking over food and clothing and, the basics, but to really get these people the education they need and the information they need, it has taken a week. So,
Jenise, I need you to put up some phone numbers, some contact that our viewers can call and make some things happen. You know, we're not in that area, but we were affected. Our printer that prints our paper lost. They still can't find one of their employees. A delivery guy had a heart attack in the parking lot. So even though we are not there directly, we are affected by what is happening there. So put those numbers up. We need to do a better job as family to alleviate some of the red tape. So when it gets to Mr. Coleman, it has been vetted and it's the truth. So this is where we need to get immediate action too. So and Mr. Coleman, we got a few minutes, but I want you to please, what is something that you need immediately, that could address this issue immediately? What is the one most thing? And I know you talked about alleviating the red tape. What is it that we can do?
To the extent possible, and I know some people have started the process, if people are able to call 1-800-621-3362, that is the process to start and jumpstart your road to recovery. That's the number to the FEMA registration process. There's a lot that comes with that. So it's not just one program, it's a multitude of programs. And so to the extent that we can get the word out far and wide, 1-800-621-3362, we will continue to provide any organization that is interested constant updates and information about the programs and benefits that they're entitled to across the federal family. So the one thing that I need, again, if you can dial that number, I see it's posted there. The other thing that I need is continued ground truth. I'm going to read a lot of reports. There's going to be a lot of things that the government provides, but we need local media. We need local partners. We need local folks telling us what is and is not working. The more we know, the quicker we can make adjustments. So that would be extremely helpful to me.
Okay. Jenise, is any local numbers that you can put up that people can join in supporting this effort? I do see that FEMA has served over 1 million meals to survivors, and they continue to operate. Again, Mr. Coleman, from your perspective of community involvement and outreach, I see you got the Salvation Army, you got the Red Cross, this Operation Barbecue. What's that, man? That is Southern Baptist Church, but that Operation Barbecue, you got to tell us a little bit about that. Jenise, we're gonna come back to you.
Well, so we have Operation Barbecue, but the other thing that we have is we want to make sure we know we have churches from the Kojic Church, from the AME Church to the National Baptist Convention. There's a lot of kitchens that are going to work, and so if there are faith organizations that are also doing feeding, we want to make sure that you're in that mix of Operation Barbecue and some of those other partners to ensure that anything that you need. And let me say, these are groups that are interested in connecting with some of these churches that might have stood up and fed people already, because people are also going to eat what's familiar to them. And after a while, if you ever had any disaster meals, after 3 or 4 or 5 of those, if you can get a better option, you're going to take it. So if, again, partnerships at fema.dhs.gov, I'd be more than happy to make sure that folks are connected to many of the groups like Operation Barbecue that are providing meals. And I know we have a few other folks. The good thing about Operation Barbecue, and I'd say organizations like World Central Kitchen, they are really intentional about working with local restaurants and helping to stimulate the economy of some of those local restaurants. So it's not like they're just coming in and then leaving. They really try to find some of those local businesses that are also feeding and serving and using that to serve the community. So they're not just getting the economy back up, but they're also providing services and food that folks are accustomed to.
Okay. Ms. Griffen?
Yeah, and I was going to suggest people can reach me directly. I put my email address in there and a phone number. They can reach out to me, and I can share whatever information I can get on some more numbers and ways to reach people directly. The NAACP Courier.org is the correct website. And people are being asked to just utilize that way of donating because they're buying drywall, they're just really addressing the needs, and that's one trusted organization that people feel that is the way to go right now. And there will be some other information later, but right now that's for the River Park and Naples area, and I can try to get some information on Fort Myers and the Dunbar community later and share that.
I see Cheryl Smith has put up a 1-800 number, so if we can put that up too. So put that 1-800 number up. Perry, you got anything you want to say before we close this section out? There you go. Cheryl Smith put that number up. So let's those who are listening and viewing, please take these numbers down and let's use them. It's time for us to act as a family. Mm-hmm. Perry? Okay, since you on mute, I'm gonna steal your thunder right now. Okay, look. Okay, all of us who profess to love people, now is an opportunity, a time for us to show it. Let's put our efforts where our mouth is, and let's make something happen. I'm calling out the NNPA, the National Newspaper Publishers Association, that organization of which Jenise, you and I belong to, Cheryl Smith. Let's put something together to get to you, Jenise, that you can use it to the best that you so see fit for those people who are affected in River Park, your area. So Dr. Chavis, I'm calling on you. Chairwoman Karen Carter Richards, out of from the Houston Forward Times, I'm calling on you and those others who are involved in getting the news out. Let's raise some money and put it in Miss Griffin's hand to do some good. Mr. Coleman, you have your assignment to do, and that's government appointed. And I'm sure you're going to do what you got to do. And the rest of us need to do what we have to do, and that's to take care of our own. So thank you all very much. We will be back in contact so we can spend some more time to see what has transpired since this time. Is that okay?
That's okay.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much. Mm-hmm. All right. Who we got back there waiting? Who's waiting in the background?
Okay. Moving on. And man, we've really got to continue to keep that on the forefront of our news going forward. Having grown up on the Gulf Coast and seen, had to go through this with Hurricane Ike. I saw, the impacts of Katrina with, people coming into Houston. Know how easy it is for people to move on. And in these situations, as they said, sometimes it takes years. I ran into a guy looking at RVs. He said he and his family lived in an RV for 3 years when Irma came through, after Irma came through. So again, these are, it's easy for the news to move on and for those without a voice to once again not be heard. And we know that those are the ones who are most devastated. So yes, we do need to make sure that we put our resources to make sure that those stories are told and identified. So on with that, moving on to our next segment. Our next guest is Dr. Alan Zeman. Dr. Zeman is running for the at-large position on the Broward School Board. Dr. Zeman is a native of Broward and attended Broward Public Schools. He is also the CEO of CHCI, company that helps organization and workforces develop leaderships. Dr. Zeman has had an extensive career within the Navy. He's worked under the Clinton administration, as well as he's worked with other prime ministers and presidents and C-level industry executives. He has an extensive knowledge, and he wants to bring that knowledge back to our school board. And now is good as time as any for us to look at all hands who want to help reestablish and reconstitute the school board. And so without any further delay, I want to introduce Mr. Alan Zeman.
Hey, what's happening, Mr.
Zeman? Dr. Zeman?
Well, that's quite an introduction, Brother Henry and Brother Busby. Every time someone articles, I'm embarrassed. I'm just hope my parents aren't listening.
Yeah, come on, Alan. You know you paid Perry on the side to do you like that.
Well, it cost me, the eagle flies on Friday, man. That's tomorrow. So I got 2 eagles for him.
Okay.
No, it's great to be here. I think the part that you didn't talk about is the part I care about so much, which is, my family benefited so much. Single earner family. My biological father walked out when I was 1 year old. I lived across from Carter Park my whole elementary years. But my mom remarried pretty quick, and my stepfather worked for Broward County Schools. And he worked hard. They sent him to University of Miami to get his doctorate. And because of that, he became more educated, became promoted, lifted up our family. I ended up going to Fort Lauderdale High School and a scholarship to Florida State. And I really owe, as does my whole family, so much to Broward County Schools. It's the largest employer in Broward County. And it's a story that I could tell over and over and over again, but thousands of other people can, about how, schools saved their lives and really made them have the opportunities. It didn't make them into better people. It provided them an opportunity to become better people. And that's what I love about education so much. I'm very proud to have run the largest training and education system in the world. For 8 years, I ran the Navy's training system. And that was just such fulfilling work. I ran into the Pentagon every day because we were responsible for sailors and Marines and civilians that work there to grow them into better people. And it was very rewarding work. But thank you for the introduction. That's worth at least 2 eagles. Thank you, my friend.
Alan, I'm gonna offer some humor here for a moment, then we'll get into some serious stuff. So you lived across from Sunland Park. Now there were a lot of mango trees in that neighborhood, and it was predominantly white. And we would come through there and get up in the mango trees and take mangoes. So I don't know if I ever took any mangoes from your tree, but I certainly took them from a lot of trees in that area.
But they had so many mangoes and avocado trees.
Yeah.
That when we were kids, we'd have fights all day long across the street, heaving them at each other, and we never ran out of fruit. Mm-hmm. It was a plentiful place, but it was a great place to grow up. I just remember stickball games and, running up and down on bikes in Carter Park. Even then was a gem. I mean, if you could just get across Sunrise safely to the park, you were in good shape. But that was such a great place to go play basketball. And I played 10,000 games of hoops right there on those courts. And every time I drive by, it brings back 1,000 memories. Many of them mangoes too, my friend. You're right. That was a big mango.
I got you. And let's do this. Now, Alan, I remember our first conversation you and I had over the phone. And you said that at that time, if you wasn't running for the same position that young Adderley was, you would vote for him because he is set in the same position that you did. You, if I'm not mistaken, was the first to sit in that seat as a youth to the school board. Am I misrepresenting that? Is that true?
That's what I'm told. They asked for somebody who was a student body president of one of the high schools to come and sit on the school board for a year. And the principal issue at that time was a dress code. They had never had a dress code, never needed a dress code. And then all of a sudden, society changed a little bit and the clothes were distracting people. So they wanted a dress code and they wanted, a student to go there and do it. And I had hair, halfway down my back, and I wasn't quite in Navy discipline yet. But I did. I went and sat there for a year. It was fascinating. And Ray Adderley is a future leader. He is going to grow. He's up at FAU, doing the right stuff, getting some education. Watch out for him. He's going to come back. He really is.
Now, we all know that our school board has experienced some difficulties, some, good times, bad times, and those that you don't want to smile at. So I have a question for you from one of our viewers. How do you see the newly elected board interacting with the remaining board members?
One of the things I love about the folks who are most likely to win school board seats is it's very clear that they put students first. And when you put students first, if you have a North Star in your life, a lot of things clear up. I know that myself from having my own North Star. But when an organization has a North Star, like we really want our students to learn. We want them to learn reading, writing, arithmetic, and data science, the fourth core curriculum that's present today. If that is what you come to work for every day, if that's the decisions that you make, if that's how you allocate resources and provide policy support to the people that work there, it doesn't necessarily allow for partisan issues to be present, or at least to be a majority of the concern. And I'm really impressed with the group of people who are running for school board, and they've convinced me that they are putting students first. And when you look at the 4 school board members who will remain on the board, including a former guest of yours on this show, I believe they all put students first. And as long as 9 people have one North Star and they say, we're going to put those students and their learning in our schools first, great things can happen. And I expect great things to happen. We got problems that are a lot bigger than, grand juries and things like that. Many people think my race is either elect Zeman or you elect somebody that Ron DeSantis appoints. And I think that's a fine way to look at it. But the bigger issue is, how do we go from Broward being a B-rated school district for the last 10 years to being an A-rated school district, just like Miami-Dade and Palm Beach County? How could we be happy for 10 years having a second-rate school system? It just doesn't make any sense. Broward starts with a B, but it ought not to end with a B. We need to be an A school district, and we need to get there in 1 year. We need to have an all-hands-on-deck Navy kind of approach to this, where we all focus on making sure that our students learn enough that we get to an A level. And then we need to focus on the schools that have been left behind for way too long.
You alluded to this. You said you mentioned a candidate who is running that is already seated. Okay, if Coleman is elected, if she's elected, what direction do you think the governor should go, considering the grand jury findings?
Well, I can't tell you what he should do. I know what the politics is, though. We are a very Democratic county. This is a school board that did not agree with his mandates on masks. I think he has not forgotten that. I think he also cares deeply about the execution of funds and about people continuing to do what's in the best interest of students. So I don't know what he should do. I don't really like the situation where a governor could remove an elected leader for anything. But I also don't think it's going to happen. I think that voters like the Sun Sentinel, are going to endorsement that came out last week, are just going to say enough is enough. We don't need the drama anymore. We ought to focus on students. And if you care about students, I just don't think it's a risk that voters want to take, to be honest with you, Bobby. I think that is what I'm focused on. I'm focused on getting a positive message out. I'm focused on bringing back some discipline, some new budgeting ideas for really, we have $25 billion to spend over the next 4 years, and we treat it, like it's, leftover lunch money. We need to be serious about $25 billion, and we need to, make sure that we take a long-term approach to that budget, that we find money to serve underserved schools for the first time, and we need to be confident that the budget is a reflection of our values. And right now, our budget is a function of what we could photocopy from last year and do it again. And that's not good enough. That kind of thinking is what gets you a B-rated school district, when you're not innovating, when you're not challenging programs to see if they're putting points on the board, and when you're not investing in programs that that will. And so I don't know what the governor should do, to be honest. I'm not the governor. That's up to him. But I do believe that if you care about students, the chance that she gets removed is very real. And so why do you want to take that risk? I also think for the last 11 years, we have not had a school district that we should be proud of. I think we've been coasting. I think we haven't been paying attention to the budget. We've been executing a bond in a way that the Florida Tax Watch says is a debacle. I mean, this is not an example of a school board that has been lauded for anything. They have been criticized for much. This is a school board that said at the end of 2018-19, when Marjorie Stoneman Douglas they put out a PowerPoint presentation saying it was the best school year yet. I mean, I just can't fathom some of the things that they've done as being something that makes sense to me. I feel like we can do so much better. Broward deserves better, and enough is enough of that stuff. Let's get on with it, and let's get back to the students.
Okay. Sure, you on?
No, that's quite a bit, man. Alan comes at you with so many, and I'm trying to. I want to go back to this B rating, and Alan, you are analytical. Your bio says that you're a data analyst. You look at these things.
You got Courier right there.
You got me on that one.
Does that save me $50?
Yeah. We're gonna talk turkey later.
I know. Wait a minute. Before you get off the turkey, the last guy's talking about Operation Barbecue.
Yeah.
I want Operation Chicken Wings, man. Out here. We're going to solve that hunger problem over there.
Right. Yeah. No, but what are in terms of this B rating, what are some of the areas do you think contribute heavily to that B rating, and how do you propose to help change that? Because I would tend to believe that some of this is more traditional mindset in terms of our schools. But what do you think are some of the issues that our kids are facing?
Well, there's some traditional things that would make a big difference. We could focus insanely on our hiring and our retention, our engagement of some very, very precious resources like our teachers. We could think deeply about leader development in growing our assistant principals and principals, which we do a barely adequate job of. We do have some great leaders, but we have great leaders by mistake, not by design. Mm-hmm. And a military person, someone who spent a lot of time as a civilian in the Navy, the youngest guy ever to be promoted to an equivalent to an admiral. I know a lot about leader development, and we don't do it in any way that represents good, defensible ways. My background as an econometrician does help me think analytically about these things. And there are equations and there are relationships between inputs and student quality that we are not taking full advantage of, and we ought to. One of the things that I'm just more excited about than anything else, though, is I just before this meeting left a meeting with a couple state reps, some very senior people in Broward County Schools, some good staff off Broward Commission, other people like FAU professors and activists from Pompano Strong. And we're putting together a list of things that will work for our underserved schools. Because one of the things you know, Perry, is if you are a B district and you want to be an A district, you can't fix the B and A schools. They're already there. You got to fix the CD schools, right? You got to lift them up. And that has a much greater effect on the average. And I believe morally we need to do that anyway. We need to get back into the business of allocating funds the most where there is the most need. And right now we don't do that. We continue to live in a world in which Mike Billings at Thurgood Marshall Elementary School, a miracle worker, by the way, who raised his school from an F to a B this year, a Title I school in West Fort Lauderdale, has become a B school. And he ought to be cast in bronze in front of Casey Wright for what he's done. He's really done a remarkable job. But if he had a job opening next year and he went to a job fair and he stood next to an elementary school in Weston or Parkland, they would have 200 applicants for the job, and he'd have to go to their lines and see if he could talk someone into applying to Thurgood Marshall. So we don't enable our leaders, our principals, to really succeed because we make them fight against each other to recruit and to retain the most precious resource in education, which is the teachers. We need to end that. We need to think about Palm Beach County's model, where they recruit to the county. And they say, look, come and work here because you care about educating students. And you can work in the school you go to first for some set of years. And then we're going to ask you to go to a challenging school. And if you agree to do that and you stay there for 3 or 4 years, we're going to let you go to any school you want to next. And we keep doing that so we get to rotate highly effective teachers to Title I and underserved schools. We've got to figure out a plan, a real plan, working with the cities, working with the county commission, maybe working with businesses and volunteers, everybody, to make sure that we are fixing our underserved schools. And they're right along I-95 and they're right across the center. You can see it on a map if you plot out the school grades in Broward County. And we need to focus on those schools if we want to become an A school in 1 year. And we know what to do. We know about class size. We know about leadership in schools. We know about enabling and hiring great teachers and then keeping them teaching. We know about how to let guidance counselors actually be counselors. You know, our guidance counselors run the car line. They supervise testing. They supervise the lunchroom. We need our counselors, our mental health professionals, to be dealing with mental health. Today, we had a suicide at Fort Lauderdale High School. That's where I went, man. I mean, it hits home. And we continue to treat some of those problems like they're third-rate problems when in fact they're first-rate problems. And all of those things together, we know how to make it an A district. That's not a mystery. We just have to have the guts to do it. And we have to make it important. And that is clearly something I'll bring to this job.
Okay. You know, Alan, you and I have engaged in conversation. I can't say that I know you, but I feel a sense of leadership. I feel a sense of bravado. You know, you're self-assured. You know, and I don't knock that. So, but my question is, you bring a wealth of knowledge to this position, and you bring raising 8 kids. You know, that's not something you shake a stick at. So my question is, how do you temper all that you bring to a board that already has a chairman and has, I hope, a vision for that board? How do you deal with that? And this is you talking, man. You know.
Yeah, I can tell you, one, I only have 7 kids, so I'll have to go check downstairs.
I gave you another one.
You know something that I don't know, Mr. Henry.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm gonna tell her don't do that.
All right. All right. I will tell you that running a campaign is an opportunity for you to put yourself out there and to talk a little bit about something I don't like talking about, like my own personal achievements. I've just been going to work every day and serving, and they ask me to do something else, I do that. And I start a company and we get clients and they ask us to do this. And it's all about how do you serve other people? And then you decide, I really want to help Broward County Schools. This is what made my family what it is. It really saved our lives in many ways, allowed us to achieve things we never would have achieved. And the process to get from here to there, you have to remind people about some of the things you've done. I don't have a temperament that requires me to be in a leadership position to be effective. Perry and I can point to 1,000 examples of where analysis and clear thinking and logical reasoning allow you to get to better decisions, even if you're one of 9. And eventually, groups tend to rely on this person for legal issues and this person for construction issues and this person for education policy issues and things like that. Might even have some teachers on the school board. And so for pedagogical reasons, you might lean to the teacher. So I probably am more self-assured, or I appear more self-assured as a candidate than I ever have in my life. It's very uncomfortable for me to talk about I all the time. I'd really prefer to talk about the team and about us and about what we can do. But to get to where I think I can do the greatest service for people, I have to go through this process of being a candidate where you talk about yourself a little bit. I was a Bill Clinton appointee. We were the first people to get these kinds of people respected in the military. I worked for foreign presidents. I was the chief economist of rebuilding Iraq for a year. I mean, those are interesting things if you're a candidate. I got to tell you, I've never talked about those things very much for the first 58 years. And I hope that if I win this election, people then look at the 4 years of my service on the board and see if they want to reelect me maybe in the future to this or other jobs. But I love working with other people. I think the wisdom of a team is always greater than the wisdom of any individual on that team. And so you have to listen to the other 8 people. They are often experts in the area that you're trying to make a decision about. So I may appear self-assured as a candidate, and I am thrilled about some of the things people have asked me to do. But I'm really a collegial team building. Let's figure this out. And again, there's 34,000 employees here. They all have a good opinion. There's 2 million people who live in Broward County. I think we need to listen to all of them about the ideas that they have. I will press things that are big issues. I will press that our C, D, and F schools have to be our initial focus if we really want to get to be an A school district. And that ought to be our immediate goal. After that, we ought to try and be the best school district in the country. I mean, we're the 6th largest. We got $25 billion over the next 4 years. Let's shoot for the moon. Let's be the best school district in the nation.
Yeah, share that $24 billion with me.
No, I agree. One of the well-known business motifs is you can't fix what you don't measure. And I would say that you can't measure what you don't monitor. So again, going back to these B ratings, what have we been measuring? What have we been monitoring? And should we change the again? If we're giving platitudes in light of disastrous results, then we have to ask, what source of information are you listening to, and where are you getting that information? And so you bring a wealth of information. Again, from a military background, you can't come in with a decision already made. You have to pull in facts, even facts that you don't like. And so I appreciate this, your resume that sometimes makes you somewhat shy, but it is exactly what we need, because our schools are really in a combat zone. And I say that as a parent who sees what's happening from parents and from grandparents alike. Our schools are really in a combat zone.
I appreciate that, Perry. I'll tell you 2 great things about this campaign. I had a former school board member tell me in confidence, although she's a very big endorser of mine, that she's never seen a candidate with my background for 20 years to run for the school board. And that's flattering because she knows the system and she's an icon of Broward County. And when an icon, kind of takes a shine to you, it really feels really good. But my favorite moment so far is working with my father at Imperial Beach Library on the last day of early voting. And we're underneath the garage in the shade and passing out cards and talking to people. And it was so, I was so proud that my dad would walk up and hand a card to someone with my name on it and say, hey, I'd like you to vote for my son for school board. He's really going to be a great school board member, right? And he's 84, did his whole career in Broward County Schools. But the poll worker came out and said, oh, you're too close to the polling station. You have to go stand outside in the sun. And this is August 29th, maybe 20th or 19th. It's like 100 degrees. My dad's 84 years old. And my dad just looks at him. He goes, no problem. I only got 3 hours left on my shift. And he walks out there and he stands in the sun for 3 more hours, passing out that card. And, when you can have moments like that, everybody from a former school board member saying, they think your qualifications are the best they've seen in a couple decades. And then you can have your father. And I have 482 people that have volunteered for my campaign. I've raised 3 or 4 times as much money as anyone's ever run for school board, which is another new thing. I mean, I'm a new candidate. I picked up the phone and called everybody. I should have called you, by the way, Bob. I called everybody that would take my call, and you just learn how to do that, and you learn how to put together some policies, and you learn how to address a room in a way where you talk about yourself all the time, which is not my thing. You get your family ready for it, because they go through a lot when you're gone every night and gone every weekend, and then campaigning so hard for so long. But to stand there and watch my dad say, no problem, I only got 3 hours left. And you're like, wow.
Mm-hmm. Alan, you're homegrown. You grew up by the railroad tracks, and you understand the different sides of the tracks, because we came over to rob your mango. You didn't shoot us, you didn't kill us. You tried to establish some communication. Now, charter schools get a lot of negative press, but the fact is charter schools are choice schools in the same way Broward County Public Schools offer choice to families through magnet and innovative programs and the reassignment process. How might the district work more closely and amicably with charter schools?
That's a great question. My parents, when I was born, were both college students at University of Florida. So I was actually born on the campus of the University of Florida. And then when I was 1, they graduated and I moved down here. But when I finished Fort Lauderdale High School, I went to Florida State. So I'm born on University of Florida campus, got an undergraduate and graduate degree from Florida State, right?
And
so I can
you get a controversy all your life. So what's that?
Exactly. What I don't understand is, like, I don't understand why Florida and Florida State need to have this rivalry. I always loved going to Florida games. They have a beautiful campus and a lot of smart people there, and the faculty are awesome. And I feel that way about charter schools too. They are a good solution for many places. But we don't work very well together. The public schools, the traditional public schools, and the public charter schools, because every charter school in Florida is a public charter. There's so much we could share with each other. They're doing new and different innovations. My cousin just came over here because they live on the West Coast, and they came over and stayed with us for a week while their house was getting ravaged by the hurricane. And it turns out she works in a charter school just south of Tampa. And she's telling me about all this group learning and how they have 4 teachers and they have 60 students and they rotate. And each teacher gets to teach what they're really great at teaching instead of having to teach for a full day. And I'm thinking, wow, what an interesting innovation in early education. And then I immediately thought about, wow, if that happened in Broward County, the traditional public education system wouldn't give them the time of day, wouldn't look at the data around that. I mean, why do we have public education starting kindergarten, Bobby? Mm-hmm. Do you know what problems there are from birth to age 5? And we do nothing about that in Broward County schools. And then we have these other schools paid for with public money, but they're called public charter schools, and we don't give them the time of day. We got to open that tent up. We got to talk about private school. We got to talk about public charter school. We got to talk about choice, and we got to talk about traditional education. And as an economist, I love competing. And so if parents have a choice between private schools, home schools, public charters, and traditional public schools, then these traditional public schools better at least be an A district, so that there's an opportunity to compete against those others.
Yeah.
But I also think there's tremendous opportunity to partner with these folks, and not just in athletics. I don't care that St. Thomas's High School plays Dillard. You know, that's just great. I mean, I enjoy the heck out of those games, especially when Dillard wins, by the way. But the issue isn't about an athletic field. It's about our community. Our schools build our community. And we ought to all care about our community. I believe deeply that we all have callings in life, but I think we all are called to leave this world a little bit better than when we were brought into it. And that can happen through great schools. You can leave a community better off than the one you found by making sure that they have great education. And that includes private schools, public charter, choice, homeschool. Let's focus on building a community. And the method by we do it ought to be partnerships, so that we share resources, share lessons, share data, Perry, so we can learn from innovations.
Right.
What if that innovation in early education that my cousin is doing turns out to raise education gains by 20%? Well, shouldn't we be learning from that, and maybe even adopting that in some traditional public education? So I have no animosity to the University of Florida, even though I'm a proud Seminole and I got Bobby Bowden's signature on that football right there. But I have no competition among, inside the Navy. You can't have competition, because you're all there to put together a fighting force that can do things when the president calls you, right? To me, the fence lines are, how are we lifting up the community through education? And they do it through homeschooling. Some people do it through choice at the Jewish day schools. Some people do it through public charters. I did it through a traditional public education school. But we've got to lock arms and figure out how to grow a great community, not get into these mindless traps about fake competition. There is no competition between these. We're all trying to build a better community.
No, and I agree with that, because one of the things that we've yet to do is find out how to create creative avenues for kids that learn differently. I mean, I'm looking at a classroom as a grandfather. I'm looking at third grade, and how much is the same, but so much has changed. But yet, you have these kids now who are so technology savvy at a very young age. I mean, we're talking kids now that are tech savvy at 2. Now you put them in a classroom at third grade, and they're more tech savvy than their teachers. How do you fix that paradigm? And I think these are the tough questions that we need to begin to ask and answer, for our kids, because again, Broward is going to change. We have to prepare kids not just for being in this sort of, what I want to say. We have an industry that's more hospitality driven and not tech driven, but yet tech is running all of the hospitality, and we're not creating the resources to fill the hospitality. These are the changes. I'm glad to hear that we have a data science curriculum, because this is where our community is going, and we can't afford to be bringing up the rear, especially within these communities that are already lacking in resources. And so how I think creating these partnerships with community and bringing industry in, I think helps these kids not just understand education, but how they can be a part of building a community even now.
You know, we watch 30 or so thousand kids a year be born in Broward County. And the challenge from our school system is, what do you want that person to be able to do in 18 years? Not what they needed to do 18 years ago. You were there. And that's the paradigm that in education has been a little slow to catch up about this future focus. And that's why if I preach about anything, it's about the 4 core curriculum: reading, writing, arithmetic, and data science. Because the children born in 2022 will be going to do something in 2040. And that no doubt will involve a lot more data science and analytics. And we do have to adapt our paradigm. But the paradigm that I'm frustrated with is how education is backward looking rather than forward looking, and sometimes slow to change or innovate. Things like birth through age 5, according to child psychologists, is incredibly important for your lifetime of learning. And it's the one area where Broward County Schools and Broward County Commission won't even pass standards for what kids need to learn before they show up to kindergarten. And then they test them on the first week, and they say 80% of your students at Dillard Elementary School last year were not even qualified to be here. And I find that hypocritical. If you don't tell schools and mothers and abuelas and grandmas and everyone else that raises these children what the standards are, don't you tell me that they failed on day 1 of kindergarten because you didn't tell them what to get ready for. And so there are other counties, for example, that are passing standards for preschools and say, hey, this is the kind of stuff you need to learn so that when you show up in kindergarten, you can get right in and keep going. But Broward County is a little slow on that. And I think that's why Broward County is still a B-rated school district, is we've been timid rather than courageous. And I can't take it when you're not being courageous about the future of our community. We got to have the courage to do the right thing.
Okay, let me do this. I see we got a couple of comments from our viewers. One, Miss McCleary says, your father was a gentleman and dedicated employee at the district during my tenure. So that's kudos to your father. So that's all right. The other question comes from a gentleman, and I know he's from South Carolina, so he's really out there, but he pays attention to the show. He asked the question, Mr. Larkin says, if the school district members were picked by the governor, does he believe he would have the strongest resume for the job? That's the first question. The B clause to his question says, what provisions would support and suggest to save and help students from the combat zone? And we know, I guess, Mr. Larkin, I don't want to think for you, but that's the inner city. So what's your comment on that, Mr. Zeman?
Well,
Alan, before you start to answer, the producers of this show are both educators, all right? And they work in the Broward County school system. And they have little darling babies that happen to be my granddaughters. So we're running over time. So you would know better than a lot of us with your 7 children what time is. So if you could, Alan, just attempt to answer that, please.
So again, I left college. My only advice from my father was, do things to the best of your ability. And so I always focused on the job that I had. I did it to the best of my ability. That's laid out the last 41 years. And largely, the first 25 or so years was the Navy or someone like the Navy, DOD or Coast Guard, intelligence agency asking me to serve and do something. I wasn't applying for these jobs. They said, come do these things. If I happen to have had some achievements that are notable for a job like this, great. I don't think governors look at resumes in the same way corporations or nonprofit or hospitals do, where they're trying to find people with certain qualifications. And my values don't align to this particular governor. But I did what I did, and the resume is what the resume. The second half of the question is, we do have significant issues with violence in our neighborhood. It's not a school issue. It's a neighborhood issue. It's a community issue. It's a gun issue. The idea that civilians could have military weapons scares me daily. The fact that bad guys now want to kill children scares me, because they used to want to do other things, but now for some reason their choice is to try and break into a school and kill our children. And so I have a very different approach than Broward County currently has on safety and security. I think we have to take a approach that starts with the fact that these bad people want to kill our kids. And that's got to be something that we take up systematically. We continue to do 1 million drills a year, but we do the same drill. Well, guess what? The bad guys know that drill too. So they're going to do something else, right? And that's the type of thinking that I worry about, is that we're not really thinking about this in the same way that we did in the national security business, which is you can't just be ready for the threat that you know about. You also got to be aware and defend yourself against other tactics that they're going to use, because they're going to be creative. You've got to be creative. And this like massive, let's do the same drill every time is nonsensical when you think about real safety and security. Physical locks and fences don't really give you security. They just create a perimeter. People give you security and safety. And in Uvalde, Texas, the gunman walked right in because there was a door that everyone in the school knew was broken and had been broken for 3 months. And how many children were killed in addition to the ones he would have gotten anyway, because that door was locked and no one did anything about it. And they didn't do anything about it because the district didn't have safety and security as a mentality, as a strategy, rather than as a facility or a fence. So I've done what I've done. I'm at the point in my life where I want to serve something that is much bigger than myself. I want to build the school district to being the best in the nation. And if that makes people think that I'm self-assured, I don't think that really fits me. I just dream big dreams. And my dream is for this county, largely motivated by what it did for my family, to take full advantage of my capabilities. And I think that means that the school board, the community, the county commission, the cities that here, 31 cities, can all contribute to this. And we can be the best school district in the country. And what would that mean for Broward County? It means, Perry, we would get the startup guys to run down to Miami and start all their high-tech jobs. But as soon as they get to about 10 employees, they move up here where it's much safer, calmer. We got prettier beaches, better looking women. We got everything in Broward County, right? And they want that. But what they need also is the workforce.
Right.
They need the talent. And that's why that data science is so important, because, if we could produce that workforce, we really can. That is the envy of Florida, because Broward is a special place. It isn't Miami. It isn't, all those other places. It's a very, very special.
Yeah, it is.
So, it's time to lift it up.
It has so much potential. And coming, not being from Broward, you can see it sometimes, I think, a lot more than people who have been here a while see it. But Broward has so much potential in terms of what it can do in this arena. And so it starts with having insightful, forward-thinking people like yourself. So I am so glad that you took this time out to enlighten us and to enlighten our audience on the possibilities. And so thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. It's been a lot of fun. And again, we can't do this without serving our underserved schools in a totally different way. We've got to pick them up to be a better rated district, and in the end, a much better community, a more morally satisfying community, because we left nobody behind. Everyone who started school was safe. Everyone has offered the opportunity to go as far as they possibly could go, that their God-given talents allowed them to go. And they were able to contribute in a way where their contributions were fully rewarded by the system. And that's, to me, the opportunity we have in front of it. It does include public charter schools. It includes private schools. It includes kind of the whole of government working together in a new and different way in Broward County. And I would find that exciting. I mean, imagine the school board, the 31 municipal leaders, and a county commission deciding together that they were going to just share ideas, align their budgets, make sure that they're all building a community. It's pretty remarkable. It's one reason why we've got 6 mayors that have endorsed my campaign, is that I came out of the city's education advisory board for the past 6 years, 5 years as a chairman. And I knew that the cities with very little money could have a big influence. But there's 30 other cities that we need to bring into that umbrella, so that we have the cities, the county represented by the commission, all of our state reps. I mean, we had 2 state reps at our practical solutions group tonight, trying to figure out what are the steps we need to take right away that can fix our underserved schools, and what are the long-term things we need to fix our underserved schools as well. And that's something that is really, really exciting to think about.
Okay, let me do this, since nobody wants to end this. Let me be the one.
The producers are calling you, aren't they?
I got you. Thank you so very much. And I would divert our attention to the comments that were made by our viewers. So when the show ends, the comments will still be there. So please go and read. I see Miss McClure has her comments, and we're so grateful for those who have tuned in. Now, Alan, I enjoy talking with you. I really do. We don't endorse on the show. We don't do that. But what we do is to engage our viewers to really get to know the candidates who are running, and do that by getting engaged with them. So that's that. Thank you so very much, Mr. Zeman. And I hope that your yard was one of the yards that we took mangoes from and ran back and forth. Right. And thank you for your parents for not really being rude to us for enjoying those mangoes. And you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. I cleaned up your mess, my friend.
Now, if we can do this, thanks, Alan. We're going to be talking again. If we can do this, Ari, can you bring up our student athlete of the week? This is what it's all about. This young man here, the student athlete, has experienced some difficult times, but has overcome them. Please read his story in the West Side Gazette. And if you find it in your heart to support the individual of this character, find a way to do so. This young man is remarkable. Josh, we know you. We know your struggles. Continue, my brother. Thank you. Now, we're going to end this in a way to create some synergy around some topics that's coming up. Next, we got District 3 candidates, Dr. Hankerson, Dr. Pam Beasley, and hopefully Ms. Yvette DeBose will join us, as well as Donna Guthridge. But until then, now, Alan, I don't know how you feel about this. You might want to cover your children's eyes on this particular video, but we got some stuff coming up. Harry, you do this part.
Okay. Yeah. We have a new segment that we want to introduce. Again, we always want to try to let you know that we're thinking and putting some ideas out here. So we have a new segment that we're going to introduce tonight, and it's called "How Bad Do You Want It?" And I think that is inadequate. I think that question is so apropos. How bad do we want the changes that we want? We can't just talk about them. We can't just pray them into existence or hope them into the existence. But how bad do we want it? And so in this segment, we want to introduce you to a video that has just come out of the 305 featuring one of my favorite hip hop artists, Trina, and another hip hop artist. If I know a lot of some of these old school folk don't know Saucy Santana, but the BLK has jumped into the campaign Get Out the Vote mode with a new video that came out yesterday from the BLK, and it's called No Vote, No Fuck. So let's play it.
Yeah. Trey Tracks, I think we got one.
It's voting season, bruh.
No voting, no loving. No voting, no touching. No voting, no nothing. No voting, no fucking. No voting, no fucking. No voting, no loving. No voting, no touching. No voting, no nothing. No voting, no fucking. No voting, no fucking. BLK app looking for some action. Swear the homie Scott was heavy. Face is a 9, abs a 10, D is a to be determined. He got mad jokes, he don't seem broke. The only red flag is that he don't vote. This midterms for all the single cute. Wanna hit this booty, gotta do your civic duty. No voting, no loving. No voting, no touching. No voting, no nothing. No voting, no fucking. No voting, no fucking. No voting, no loving. No
Yeah, I know.
No voting, no fucking.
But now we had some extensive conversation, and we're gonna continue this. But in order to clean a fish, you got to catch the fish, and depending upon the bait you use, would allow you to catch the fish. Yeah. And if we all can agree, this voter turnout is one that we can't pass up on. So, in the words of Malcolm X, by any means necessary. Yeah. So, but I also want to, and I want to digress for a minute, and thank you very much, Gloria Lewis. There's a 102-year-old lady. They will be celebrating her birthday, and Gloria, you didn't put it up. Where's the information? But that's, we want to pay kudos to the 102-year-old lady as well as these hip hop individuals. So there, we gotta bring us all in. We got to bring us, and we got to communicate. So Dr. Zeman, we thank you so very much for your input in this show, and for the, how do I say this? Because you're something else, Doc. I'm telling you, we're gonna have some more conversation. Your is it data-driven perspective, military oriented guidance that gets you to the point where you can communicate with all of us? Is that what it is? I don't know, but we are certainly grateful. All right.
Blast. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Let's get back together whenever you're ready.
Okay. City of Fort Lauderdale Lakes, Marie Jean, that's her name, the 102-year-old lady. Good night, everybody. And
good night.
No voting.
No fucking.